Lastly, we get on to question 8, which was by far the hardest question for both groups. Let's read it carefully there. It says, using features or activities specific to each group of organisms describes how you can tell the difference between organisms in the following kingdoms. Each description can only be used once. So that was a mistake that quite a few people made, using the same description over and over. We'll work in some of these ideas. I'll talk you through how I would work it, but most of your answers to this would have been on your A3 sheet that you got when we went through this topic as part of our notes. We'll work through it individually, we'll come up with a few different ideas and go back and tweak our answers. So, animals and plants, what's the difference? Well, there's quite a few differences. For example, we could say that plants, or only plants, and we know we're not talking about animal cells, have chloroplasts, or a cell wall, or a large permanent vacuole. Vacuole. Any of those would be fine. Difference between animals and fungi. Again, animals don't have a cell, so only fungi have a cell wall. Probably means we're not going to use it for our answer up here then. We'll try the chloroplast. Animals and bacteria. Now, the classic thing that bacteria don't have, that animal cells do have, only animals have a nucleus. That is a defining feature of a bacteria. Prokaryotic cell is that there is no nucleus. Plants and bacteria, got a few differences here again. Again, only plants have a nucleus. But we said that above, so we can't use that one. What we should have said above also is that a plant cell is a eukaryotic cell, which means it has lots of what we call organelles, parts inside it that bacteria won't have. So anything that's bound within a membrane will be present in a plant, but not bacteria. And the same would go for animals. So we could have also said that here, they have a nucleus. Only animals have a nucleus or mitochondria. Both those statements would also be true for a plant versus bacteria. What we can say here is that only the plants, so we could use this one here, that only plants have mitochondria. Difference between plants and fungi, these are both quite similar. They both have a cell wall, but only plants of these two have chloroplasts. Okay, fungi don't. Fungi feed by secreting enzymes and digesting decaying matter. That's why we find them growing sort of rotting fruit and in damp woodlands. Whereas plants, we saw from an earlier question, are autotrophs. They produce their own food by the process of photosynthesis, and in order to do that, they need the chloroplasts. Further on, plants and Protoctista, quite difficult now to think of some differences. So plants and Protoctista are both eukaryotic cells. Some Protoctista have chloroplasts, not all of them. So they both have a nucleus, they both have mitochondria. Some Protoctista have chloroplasts. So struggling to find differences here. The differences we would distinguish those are only plants have a large permanent vacuole. Protoctista and bacteria, really struggling for answers now. The difference between the two there, now this would be acceptable, is to say the size. Bacteria tend to be 10 times smaller. If we hadn't used earlier, we could have said the difference between a nucleus there, or the difference between the presence of mitochondria, but we're trying to not repeat the answer, so we're sort of running out a little bit here. Lastly, question 8, bacteria and viruses. Again, we could have used size. Bacteria are different to viruses, but the big difference, a lot of people picked this one up, which was good to see, is that bacteria are living organisms. Don't know why I put the air quotes there, it's not really air quotable. Viruses can't survive on their own, they need a host, they're not technically classed as living organisms, so that would be a big distinguishing between them there. Lastly, again, we did, however, briefly look at pathogens in lessons. We did come up with some examples, but it seems that almost no one had revised these for the test. So we lost 6 pretty easy marks. I will go through some examples that you can use and hopefully will refer to in the future. So a virus, good one to come up with was influenza, or you could have had HIV. You could have had measles. Those would be 3 examples of viruses. And the disease they cause, not the symptoms. You ask what disease, the name of the disease it causes. Too many of you talked about runny noses and spots and things like that. Influenza causes flu. HIV causes AIDS. And measles virus causes measles, which is nice and easy to remember. So any one of those for each line would have got you 2 marks in total. Bacteria, best example to come up with here is Salmonella. And that causes food poisoning. There are obviously other bacteria, but they're probably one you most likely remember. Lastly, protists that cause that, again, one you need to just learn and remember is Plasmodium. This is a single-celled, free-living organism. It's in the Protoctista family, and it causes malaria. Okay, it's what is transmitted by different mosquito. It gets into your red blood cells in your liver and damages the cells there, which causes the symptoms we associate with malaria. Right, that's the end of my sort of walkthrough through the test. Please make sure you've gone through, you've made those corrections, you've learned from the mistakes. You will get similar questions in future tests, and make sure you've gone through and got them right this time around. Thank you.